The thing about family dinners at my parents' house is that they always follow a script. Dad sits at the head of the table, in the same chair he's occupied for 30 years. Mom brings out the roast, or the chicken, or whatever she spent all afternoon preparing. My older brother, Kevin, talks about his sales numbers. My younger sister, Michelle, shows photos of her kids. And I sit quietly, eating my food, playing the role of the family disappointment. "How's the apartment search going?" Mom asked, passing me the mashed potatoes. "Still looking," I said, which was true in a sense. I was always looking at real estate, just not apartments for myself. Dad cut into his steak with more force than necessary. "At 34, you should own something by now. Kevin bought his first house at 28. Kevin nodded from across the table. "Market was better then, but still. You've got to build equity, Sarah. Renting is throwing money away." "I'm aware," I said mildly. "Are you?" Dad set down his knife and fork, giving me his full attention, the same attention that used to make me nervous as a child, desperate for his approval. "From where I'm sitting, you've been working at that property management company for what, 8 years? And you've got nothing to show for it." 7 years, actually. 7, 8, what's the difference? Point is, you're spinning your wheels. Living in that tiny apartment, driving a 10-year-old Camry. Stop pretending to be successful when you're clearly not. Uncle Frank, Dad's younger brother, raised his wine glass. "Your father's right. At your age, you should have assets, property, investments. You'll never own anything at the rate you're going." I kept eating my dinner, cutting my steak into precise pieces. "You're probably right." Michelle jumped in, trying to help in her well-meaning way. "Sarah works really hard, Dad. Property management is a real job." "I didn't say it wasn't a real job," Dad snapped. "I said it's not getting her anywhere." He leaned back in his chair. "You know what your problem is? You're too passive. Too willing to accept whatever comes your way instead of fighting for more." Mom placed her hand on his arm. "Richard, maybe we could talk about something else." "No, Barbara. She needs to hear this. All her life, Sarah's been content to just exist. No ambition, no drive. Look at Kevin, regional sales director. Michelle, married well, beautiful family. And Sarah? Still in that cramped apartment complex, doing admin work." What Dad didn't know, what none of them knew, was that 3 years into my admin work, I'd started buying properties myself. A duplex at first, then a 4-unit building in a transitioning neighborhood. I'd learned to spot potential, to run the numbers, to manage contractors, renovations, tenants. What they really didn't know was that I'd bought Dad's house 5 years ago, when he was facing foreclosure after a bad business investment. I'd bought it through an LLC, hired a management company to handle the ownership details, and let him believe he'd worked out a special arrangement with the bank. Property taxes, insurance, major repairs, all of it flowed through my accounts, while Dad thought he was just making his mortgage payments to some faceless lending institution. "I'm doing okay," I said quietly. "Okay isn't good enough," Dad barked. "You're 34 years old. When I was your age, I owned this house, had 2 kids, and was building a business. What do you have?" I looked at him across the table, at the house that was legally mine, that I'd saved when his construction business collapsed. At the property tax bills I paid every November. The homeowner's insurance I renewed every spring. The new roof I approved last year when he thought the bank covered it. "Not much," I said. "You're right about that." Kevin shook his head. "Sis, you've got to want more for yourself. That's all Dad's saying. Have some ambition." "Kevin's mortgage is $2,800 a month," Dad said proudly. "That's $33,000 a year in equity he's building. What are you paying in rent? $1,200? That's $14,400 a year you'll never see again." Actually, my rent was $950, for a perfectly nice 1-bedroom that required zero maintenance from me. And the 18 properties I owned across 3 counties generated about $4,000 to $7,000 a month in gross rental income. But who was counting? "You make a good point," I said instead. Uncle Frank leaned forward. "You need to get aggressive, Sarah. Real estate is wealth building. I've got 3 rental properties myself. Bought them over the years, built up equity. That's how you create financial security." 3. I'd closed on my 19th 2 weeks earlier. A 6-unit building near the university, strong rental income from student housing. That's impressive, Uncle Frank, I said sincerely. And it was. 3 properties was more than most people ever accumulated. It's not rocket science, he continued. You just have to stop being afraid of debt. Leverage is your friend. Take out a loan, buy a property, rent it out. The tenants pay your mortgage. I'll think about it, I said. Dad sighed heavily. That's what you always say. I'll think about it. Meanwhile, time's passing. You're getting older. At some point, you've got to stop thinking and start doing. Mom cleared her throat. Who wants dessert? I made apple pie. The conversation shifted to safer topics. Kevin's latest sales trip, Michelle's youngest starting kindergarten, Uncle Frank's upcoming vacation. I helped Mom clear the dishes, accepted my slice of pie, and continued playing my role as the family underachiever. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my property manager at Sterling Properties, where I still worked full-time because I actually enjoyed the work. Tenant in 4B says kitchen sink is leaking. Should I call the plumber? I texted back, yes, use Jerry. He's familiar with that building. Sarah, put the phone away at dinner, Dad said without looking at me. Sorry. I slipped it back into my pocket. After dessert, I helped Mom load the dishwasher while the men watched football in the living room. Don't take it personally, Mom said quietly. Your father just wants the best for you. I know. He worries. We both do. You're so quiet about your life. We never know what's really going on with you. I'm fine, Mom. Really? Are you dating anyone? Not at the moment. You should try those dating apps. Michelle met several nice men before she met Tom. I'll consider it. She patted my arm. You're a good girl, Sarah. I just wish you'd fight for yourself a little more. Let people see what you're capable of. If only she knew. Don't do that, Dad said sharply. Don't downplay what you've done. 8 million isn't luck. No, I agreed. It's 9 years of 18-hour days. It's learning to read market trends and spot undervalued properties. It's developing relationships with contractors and learning to manage renovations under budget. It's tenant management and legal compliance and financial modeling and risk assessment. It's a lot of things, but luck is only a small part of it. Mom wiped her eyes. The house. You saved the house. I saved your house. Dad's house. The house where I grew up. Yes. But why? Dad's voice cracked. Why would you do that without telling me? Because you needed help and wouldn't have accepted it if you'd known it was coming from me. Because you were ashamed of the business problems and didn't want anyone to know. Because I had the ability to help, and it seemed like the right thing to do. But you let me think. He stopped, swallowed hard. I've been making those payments every month, thinking I was paying a mortgage, maintaining my house, being responsible, and it was all. It wasn't fake, Dad. You were being responsible. Those payments cover most of the operating costs. The property taxes and insurance I handle separately. Yes, you're not living here for free. You're contributing significantly to the household expenses, about 60%. Gerald said about that. Yes. Taxes alone are $8,200 a year. Insurance is another $2,400. Your payments don't cover everything, but they cover a lot. Uncle Frank stood up abruptly. I need a drink. Richard, you want a drink? Yeah, Dad muttered. Yeah, I do. They disappeared into the kitchen, leaving me alone with Mom. Sarah, she said softly. When you said you were looking at apartments, what did you actually mean? I was looking at a 12-unit building in Riverside. Needs some work, but the location is good, and I think I can get it for under market value. I made an offer last week. So, you're not looking for a place to live? No. I'm happy where I am. Low overhead means more capital for investment. She let out a short, slightly hysterical laugh. Your father told you that you'd never own anything, and you own our house. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. Don't apologize. Don't you dare apologize for being generous and discreet, in everything we raised you to be. I wish I'd known. I wish I'd seen it. I tried to tell you, Mom. Remember 2 years ago at Thanksgiving? I mentioned I was thinking about expanding into commercial properties. You said that sounded nice and asked if I'd tried online dating. She covered her face with her hands. Oh God, I remember that. I thought you meant you were maybe thinking of buying a small rental house someday. I meant I was considering purchasing a 6,000 square foot commercial building to convert into office spaces. Did you buy it? Yes. It's fully leased now. 3 businesses, generating $8,500 a month. Dad and Uncle Frank returned with whiskey glasses. Dad handed one to Mom, who accepted it without protest. I don't understand, Dad said, sitting across from me again. How did we not see this? How did we miss that you were building an empire while we thought you were struggling? Because I didn't need you to see it. I just needed to build it. But why? Why let us think you were, he gestured helplessly. Unsuccessful. Directionless. A disappointment. I met his eyes. Because correcting you every time you made assumptions was exhausting. Because I got tired of trying to make you understand. Because at some point, I realized my success didn't require your validation. The words hung between us like smoke. Uncle Frank broke the silence. That's fair. Brutal, but fair. I'm not trying to be brutal. I'm trying to be honest. You asked why I didn't tell you. I'm telling you. I tried. You didn't hear me. Eventually, I stopped trying. Mom set her glass down with a sharp click. And the house? When were you planning to tell us about the house? Honestly, I wasn't. I was going to keep paying the taxes and insurance and let you live here as long as you wanted. When you eventually passed away, I'd have quietly transferred it to Kevin or Michelle. Nobody needed to know. That's insane, Kevin's voice came from the doorway. Michelle stood behind him. Is it? I turned to them. What would have been better, telling Dad I'd bought his house out from under him, making him feel like he'd failed so completely that his daughter had to rescue him? That seemed crueler than just handling it quietly. She's got a point, Michelle said softly. Kevin stepped into the room, pale. Sarah, this is crazy. You're a property manager. How do you own 19 buildings? 20. I closed on number 20 last week. A 6-unit near the university. 20 properties. Kevin sat down on the floor, unable to process it standing. And you still work at Sterling. Why? Because I like it. Because property management was how I learned the business. Because keeping that job keeps me grounded in the work, real work, instead of just collecting rent checks from a distance. Dad stared into his whiskey glass. 5 years. You've been saving my house for 5 years and letting me lecture you about building equity and financial responsibility. You weren't wrong about the principles, Dad. Building equity is important. Owning property does create wealth. You taught me that. I didn't teach you anything, he said bitterly. You figured it out on your own while I was too busy being disappointed in you to see what you'd actually accomplished. That's not entirely true. Remember when you used to take me to estate sales? You'd point out what needed fixing, what had potential. I learned that from you. Estate sales, he repeated. You learned real estate investing from me taking you to garage sales. I learned to see potential. To understand that something's current condition doesn't define its future value. That's the foundation of everything I've built. Michelle was crying now, too. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I thought you were just, I don't know, content with not having much. And the whole time you've been running a multi-million-dollar portfolio. Yeah. I looked at my family, all these people who'd known me my whole life without really seeing me. Look, I know this is a lot to process. I know you all feel bad about the assumptions you made. But I don't need apologies. I need you to understand that I'm okay. I've always been okay. I didn't need saving or fixing or lectures about ambition. I just needed to be left alone to build what I was building. Uncle Frank raised his glass. To Sarah, who apparently has more guts than the rest of us combined. Mom smiled through her tears. What happens now? Nothing, I said simply. You live here. You keep making your payments. Everything continues exactly as it has been. The only thing that changes is now you know the truth. The story continues through Sunday dinners, reconciliations, and Dad finally seeing her clearly for who she is, not the family disappointment, but the one who quietly built stability for them all.